to put in, we wait 5 seconds of silence, and I'll do the introduction and everything.
It's part of the episode.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, let's see. Sorry, I'm just getting.
Damn. I just got an interesting report we could maybe discuss.
All right.
Charlotte would be interested in trading number 2 pick to New Orleans for deal including Ingram. They would prefer BI over Zion.
I like it. I think we should add that in there. We'll do all the Charlotte stuff.
Yeah, we'll
nail it all. All right. We are posted on Twitter.
And is your Instagram Aaron Barton 1?
Yeah, Aaron Barton 1. Yes, sir.
Putting that on the story.
Sounds good.
All right. Cool. Let's get the show on the road. Oh. I'm excited.
Yes, sir.
All right. Getting started in 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to the Wise Guys podcast. I am your host, Brady Fitzgerald, joined as always by my co-host, Chris Hagan.
How you guys doing?
I'm doing pretty well, but we have a special guest today. I had to bring in, we're doing NBA offseason stuff. Had to bring in my my expert, Aaron Barton, feller TDX member in Theta Delta Chi, University of South Carolina. Okay. Aaron, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
It is a pleasure to be here, guys. Thank you for having me. I'm doing pretty good. Just got off work, ready to talk some ball with some wise guys.
It's better than talking ball on a Friday afternoon,
right?
I don't think
get off the weekend the right way.
Yeah,
exactly.
There's nothing better than it. Well,
nothing.
Big news this morning in your Charlotte area, Aaron. Michael Jordan, the team owner for the past 13 years, has decided to sell the team.
He has.
So, I mean, it hasn't been a great run with Jordan, but
no.
So what's your excitement level at with the new owner coming in?
It's hard to say because I mean it's in the middle of obviously the team is undergoing a bunch of changes from the jump before, we even found out about this. I think that this definitely helps. I don't think, despite a lot of people think it's, or a good amount of Hornets fans think it's, kind of a monumental change happening with us, which I think long term, definitely, but short term, it doesn't change a ton. A few stats that I wanted to make sure that I read for us here, just pulled up a post. Shout out to Charlotte Hornets only if any of you listening happen to be Hornets fans. He's a friend of a friend. He's a great Hornets fan page. Here's a few stats. In Michael Jordan's 13 seasons as the Hornets owner, never won a playoff series, never finished higher than 6th in the East, 5th worst winning percentage in the NBA. And he still
worst actually sounds pretty good based on those other stats.
But he made $2 billion off the sale, which is more than he's made with his Nike deal. I think they said, MJ will still make over $2 billion on the deal, which is more than he has made from Nike in 40 years. So pretty crazy. Damn. However, what I'm hoping, because my dad and I were talking about this earlier, what I'm hoping is that this leads to either next season, before the season starts. I don't care. I want Clifford gone. I don't know why Jordan decided it was the right thing to do to bring him back. I know Kupchak was in on that too. I think Kupchak, I just kind of have neutral feelings towards him right now, but I personally would not mind seeing him go, really. My final opinion on him is going to really be made up of what we do with this number 2 pick. There's a lot of good things that we can do with this pick and very few bad things, but if we screw it up, I'm going to be off the hook. So I think, sorry, to go back to answer your original question, I think my excitement level, I'd say I'm content with it. I'm happy. I'm not thrilled. I'm kind of just sitting in my seat, just leaning back, looking at what might happen, you know?
Yeah, do you see with this ownership change, a little more aggression with this number 2 pick, a little more safety with this number 2 pick? Um, where do you want them to go, and where do you
I
think's
mean,
gonna
there's
happen?
really like two guys, right?
Right.
You're kind of
Um,
going back and forth on.
I I'm in the camp of either draft Scoot or trade the pick. Personally, I Brandon Miller very well could be a great player. He very well could be. But I think, Bill Simmons said it great in, I think, even like December. If it weren't for Victor Wembanyama being essentially a bona fide, as soon as he hits the league, probably the first guy since Blake Griffin to be a rookie all-star. I mean, he's gonna, like, no one's questioning that the chance of him being a bust is just about as minimal as could be. So if he weren't in this draft, Scoot would be the clear-cut number one guy, um, as of December. And now some of that's changed because Brandon Miller had a really solid season. But people are forgetting that Scoot is also, there's a chance that this guy is generational. And in my opinion, when there's a guy that's generational that's there, you have to take him. And that's just my opinion. You have to take him on that chance that if this hits, then it changes the trajectory of your franchise pretty much forever. So I'm in the camp of, just because of the quote unquote fit, which I don't even think is bad, because at the end of the day, we obviously we've needed to trade Terry for a long time. I mean, he's a short shooting guard that can't play defense. You don't necessarily move LaMelo to the two, but I mean, backcourts are so fluid now. He's really good off ball, really solid catch and shooter. So at the end of the day, I go bring in Scoot. You have good wings anyways, and Miles and Kelly. Or if you don't bring in Scoot, trade the pick. BI is an option that they like, apparently. I mean, I personally would love Zion. I don't know why the Hornets wouldn't love Zion. I know, the injury concerns are a big thing, but I mean, he's a superstar when he's healthy. He's like, numbers say that he's a top five player in the league when healthy. So I mean, that's just a guy that I would not mind at all taking a flyer on. But at the end of the day, that's my thoughts on what we should do with the number two pick. If we take Brandon Miller, I'm not gonna lie, I would be pretty upset, just because I think that there's less of a chance that he becomes exactly what we need with the number two pick than, with it being, or rather than it being as rewarding of taking that chance on a guy like Scoot. Yes, he needs the ball in his hands to be successful, of course, but he's a player that I mean, just watch the tape. He's ridiculous. And I don't know. I'm all for Scoot. I'm all for trading it. One of those things, let it happen or make it happen.
You would be okay with the trade with the Pelicans to get Ingram, or does it have to be Zion?
Um, I per It depends, because the thing about it is, so many people would say things similar to, if we got Ingram, that it would make it similar to, or why wouldn't you just draft Brandon Miller in that case? And in my opinion, it's like, dude, Brandon Ingram is a ridiculously good player. I mean, he's putting up 25 a game. Last time he was healthy enough to be able to contend for it, he was an all-star. He produces at high levels. He's great late in game, and he's a good wing. And having a good wing would give us flexibility to, if Miles doesn't get back to where he needs to be, we want to even play Miles at the four. Whatever happens there, if we don't want to re-sign Kelly and we want a long-term answer at the three, I'm all for Ingram. Do I think that the number two pick is worth Ingram and Ingram alone? I don't know. So maybe there's another piece there that would be even, added in, another solid role player. I don't know. I mean, like, it's too much to ask for another guy like an Herb Jones. If it's not, though, I would love an Herb Jones. I would love, I mean, if they would even consider throwing Alvarado in there. I mean, like, I would love that. Like, I just think, I'd be perfectly good with Ingram. I just wouldn't want to do. like even players / salaries and Zion, I'm good with that. But if it's Ingram alone, I would rather like have Ingram and another role player. Is kind of where I'm at.
I think that makes sense. You get the upside with the Zion trade where you can bona fide that, you can just like defend that, saying, "Hey, we're getting this number one
Mhm.
pick. He was in a bad situation. Pelicans weren't the team for him. He hasn't been healthy." And some of these guys, it seems like just look at Embiid. I mean, he didn't play the first 2 years of his season or of this career, and then he
No,
stayed.
Like
He's
more than that, honestly.
Yeah, and he hasn't stayed the healthiest, but hasn't had a season where he's missing 65% of the games since then. So
right.
I think if you're getting Zion, you're hopefully getting, after all this stuff coming out about him, hopefully a motivated player, someone who wants to recreate his image. And from Carolina, from South Carolina actually.
Right.
So
Spartanburg.
close to home. Um, played in your Duke.
Oh,
And
man.
I think that would be a perfect fit. And I think that's the way you got to look at it. Where if you're getting Ingram, definitely try to get maybe even a Dyson Daniels if you can. Try to get that two
Right.
guard somewhere else. And maybe you throw back Terry Rozier, or maybe you throw back a Kelly Oubre. So
Right.
I
Sadly,
think.
Kelly's a restricted free agent, so he wouldn't be able to do that. But
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
you get like a Terry, take Gordon's contract off, like one of those guys, like probably Terry or Gordon, one or the other. If we could even make it work to do both, and if they throw in another role player with a bad contract, I would have to look at their like the team and their current contracts to see exactly who that would be. But if they can make that work, like take both off our shoulders, please.
I don't
Like
get it for the Pelicans though. You're gonna.
I don't know. I listen. They just apparently really want Scoot,
I
and
don't understand that. They have CJ. Like, do they not understand? Like, the Blazers tried to do this. They had Dame and they had CJ, and it didn't work.
in my
They're now
opinion,
trying to get a worse Dame and still an older CJ.
I just personally, and before I go into this take, I'd sadly apparently Charlotte has said that we don't want Zion, which I mean,
Oh,
I can understand why. It's, wouldn't be on the safest of sides to take him. But apparently
has too much sex.
apparently they would prefer Ingram over Zion. I don't know. But to go into my take, I mean, personally, New Orleans was the only time this season where the Nuggets were not the highest seed in the West. It was New
Was when
Orleans.
Zion's was healthy. Yeah,
Exactly. So I don't think that their problem, my thing about it is if you want to trade Zion because of that, I get it. If that's what you want to do, then go for it by all means. But I just don't think their problem's roster construction. I think it's health. I mean, when they were healthy, they showed that they were a very good team. Not even, and the amount of games, I mean, I'd have to look this up, but I think they played somewhere around under 20 games together this entire season with both Zion and Ingram. So, like, when you look at it like that, it's like, dude, when they had both of their stars, they were an incredible team. When they only had Zion, they were a great team. When they only had Ingram, they were still a really solid team. So I just think it's like, dude, why don't you try to just spend 1 year, just try to have everybody healthy? And if you don't, that's when I'd say throw in the towel. Like if and just try and, move some guys around. But I get it. You want to get ahead of the game while their value's still up. I understand. But I just don't frankly see why you would do that after your team was just first in the East when they were healthy. That's just my opinion.
How much merit are we actually going to put into the Zion report? And I know like we have a couple stories on here that we're going to talk about, obviously that same thing. But I mean, it comes out that what was the initial report that they're like taking calls on him?
Well, just an hour ago, they did say that Zion essentially has no relationship with the Pelicans.
yeah,
That
I
like
saw that. I feel like that's fake.
it very well could be, but that's just that Bleacher Report threw that up. I saw that he's like not talking to players and coaches. So who knows? And if that's the case, then I'd be shocked if he doesn't get traded somewhere, whether it be Charlotte, whether it be elsewhere, whatever. But if that's not like that, as you said, Brady, very well may not be the case. I mean, you never know.
The comments are comments about you, AB. JJ's in the
Oh, really?
comments. Tommy's in the my
Really?
mom actually is in the
Oh,
comments. Not my actual mom, it's
no.
Tommy. But anyways, we kind of came into this saying what are some of these stories that are gonna be real? What are some of these that are pretty fake?
Mm.
I'm putting my stamp on the Zion one that's fake. There's no I as you just
Just
oh go ahead.
I was just gonna say I can't imagine that. Has it been like 3 years he got drafted? And like we're talking about
Well,
Wemby being this guy whose possibility of him being a bust is so low, and he's this crazy hyped prospect. Zion was maybe not to the level that Wemby is right now, but very close to that level of hype going in.
correct.
No one denies that he has the talent.
Right.
Yeah, and
I cannot imagine them moving on from that already.
and
I
not
agree.
just last year, as Aaron was talking about, but the past ever since they've drafted him, every time he's healthy, he is a dominant player, and he's out there and he disrupts everything that all the other teams are doing. They run that point Zion, people don't know how to defend it, and there's just no real merit to him on the trade block, and you're not going to get if you get Scoot Henderson. That is you're hoping Scoot Henderson becomes a better version and a better version of like some guard. But when you have Zion, you're looking for a peak power forward that can play center. He's
Right.
versatile. He moves the ball well. He's smart when he has the ball in his hands, and that's just always been more valuable in the NBA.
Guard 1 through 5.
Yeah. Yep.
And you're also, to me, you're banking on Scoot reaching his potential versus banking on Zion simply being healthy, which I say simply, it's not, sadly, simple wouldn't be a good way to describe it. But I just don't like that because one guy, when he does play, is one of the best players in the NBA. He is a superstar when he plays. Not just a star. When he is healthy, he is a superstar. But he's not healthy that often. So I understand their thought process with it, but I have a take that, in my opinion, I think with how many owners now are so progressive, I think that almost everybody in the NBA, especially with how there's not a Cavs Warriors situation and there's so much clarity and so much talent, I think that almost every owner in the league is in win now mode. Because I mean, you saw it with the Suns and Monty too. You saw it with the Bucks. I mean, with the Bucks and Bud, that didn't surprise me, and I completely understand that move. But I think more so it applies with Phoenix and Monty because it's like, you look at that and they lost to the team that won the championship and they lost in 6 with Chris Paul and Ayton both hurt. And it was only 2 years after Monty took them to the finals. So, in my opinion, it's like you're missing your starting point guard, you're missing your starting center, and you've had a team that only played, I believe, like 13 games together with their core before the playoffs.
If that.
Like you didn't even get to see this team work, and you fire your coach after, and it's a different situation. Obviously, it's coach being fired, player being traded, whatever. But it's there's so much less patience in the league today because I think there's almost every owner is like, I saw how the Warriors did it. We can be that. Like we want to be that. There's nobody that's like gonna consistently win every year other than like Denver that is obviously by far like the most, sturdy contender right now. So why not try and go turn ourselves into that? When in reality, I just think that that line of thinking can lead to being so flawed because then you're just constantly trying to. I mean, there's only been one franchise that stayed in contention for almost the entirety of them being around, and that's Miami. And that's because Pat Riley's just a genius. And that's because Eric Spoelstra is a phenomenal coach. And outside of that, there's just not a team that's like successfully been able to say, "Hey, let's just contend for 20 years." And then
Spurs for a while.
huh?
Spurs.
Or yeah,
Spurs
yeah,
for a
yeah.
while, but you also had a generational coach there. You had Tim Duncan who played for 60 years.
Right, right. And that exactly. That's another example. Right. But even the Spurs at some point were like, "You know what? Now's the time to burn it down." And they burned it down, and now they have Trey Jones, Victor Wembanyama, Jeremy Sohan. I mean, they have a very solid young core. And I mean, on top of Keldon Johnson, Keon, I mean, these guys that like this team could be a contender in 2 or 3 seasons. Like, if it goes as planned. So it's like, even they are a genius organization and said, yeah, if you're going to pull the plug, the faster you get back to contention is if you pull the plug 110%. Like you don't do what Charlotte did and you leave the plug in like just by 10 or 20% so that you suck, but you don't suck bad enough to get the picks or to get, just like that level of pity to where you are genuinely the worst team in the league. Forever, we were treading around that 10 to 12 range, and it sucked because we were constantly
Sounds like
getting
the Wizards.
right. That's why the Wizards suck. Like, and which is why the Beal rumors are now a thing because it's like pull the plug or become a great team, but you got to commit to one or the other. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that brings a great point into when you're looking at the landscape of next year. There's going to be a couple teams that are surprisingly going to be tanking, and it's not a lot of teams. I mean, you look at the Western Conference, the Trailblazers want to still compete somehow. The Spurs want to start winning games with Victor Wembanyama. Jazz started winning games last year. Mavericks just happened. I mean, they want to win, but they're just garbage. So when you're looking at the landscape, I mean, is the Wizards going to be one of the only tanking teams in the league coming next year?
They could be.
I'm assuming that there's pressure from the top down. Like the Sixers got crucified, and they didn't try to hide it at all. It was a very open tank job, but league does not want that. Like that's not what the league wants.
That's why they changed the way the draft lottery works.
Exactly. So what if you're the top 3 worst team, you have a 14%
Yes.
chance at number 1? Is
Yeah.
that how it's set up?
No. Yeah.
Yeah. Top 3 get 14.
And then it's 12.5 after 14, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're like guaranteed like top 5 or like the top 3 teams are like guaranteed top 5 or whatever.
Yeah.
Or bottom.
Also,
you can still get ripped off.
On the note of teams tanking / not tanking, don't be surprised when you see Charlotte is better than they're supposed to be, or better than the majority of people, insiders, guys who just run shows like y'all, end up performing better than they / we think they're going to be. And the reason why I say that, it's not like the record was anything amazing, but the last time they had a healthy start to the season and a healthy core of LaMelo, Gordon Hayward, and Miles Bridges, their record was, I believe, 22 and 14 or something along those lines, or maybe it was 24 and 16. Yeah, 24 and 16 sounds right. And it was in 2021, and they were 4th in the East. They're 4th in the East. And I'm not saying they could have kept that up the whole season, but then one injury after another, and then this season came around. Obviously, when your all-star goes down and misses the vast majority of the season, that's not going to help. When your guy who was a fringe all-star ends up, doing some pretty terrible things, that doesn't help. And when Gordon Hayward is just a role player now and can't produce the way that he once did, that doesn't help either. But now that we're in this position where we'll either get a very good player or no, we'll either get a chance on a great player or a very good player out of a trade, and you're going to come into the season healthy, and you're going to get the guy who did the tough thing back, assuming he doesn't, we don't trade him or something along those lines. I think we could be solid. Do I think we're going to be, in contention year one? No. I think in the next 5 years, yeah, I do.
So you're the GM.
This is a
Just to
great
wrap up.
working around the Miles Bridges stuff,
Yeah,
by the way.
yeah.
I don't think there's a really politically correct way to say he committed domestic violence.
Yeah, it was
That's
really
really
pretty
Did a
tough.
tough thing.
the only way
Was
you could say it.
a good way to phrase it.
So to wrap up this Hornets talk, you're the GM. It's Zion or Scoot Henderson are your two options.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Gosh, that's tough because you're asking me to
That's a
put
great
myself
question.
in his shoes. Because the thing about it that why I didn't think of the camp that I'm definitively in with that one is because I told myself I'm fine with either. Both, yes, both are dice rolls. With Scoot, you're banking on him becoming that all-star, potentially even all NBA player. You're banking on the fit working with LaMelo, which although I defend it more than the vast majority of NBA fans and Hornets fans do, and I think that it could work more than that those camps typically do. It's still a question mark. You're banking on those things with Scoot. With Zion, you're purely banking off health, which is a really tough thing to do.
You're
And
avoiding the
because,
question.
huh?
You're avoiding the
Just talking
question.
I know.
around
Talking
it.
right around it.
Because of banking on health, I think I'm gonna have to go Scoot. And because I'm
The thing
rooting
with
for
Scoot
Zion.
is you
I
can.
am.
The thing with Scoot is you could be like it doesn't work out year one. You're like, 5 more years. Just give it more time.
Yeah, you can say, yeah, if if he comes in as a rookie and he's not, just blow your mind incredibly great year one, it's like, okay, that's not the most shocking thing. But personally, I think he'll be pretty ready year one. Um, but obviously he won't reach his full potential year one, but I think he's gonna come in ready. Um, but personally, I'd go Scoot just because he doesn't, he's not incredibly injury prone. He had an injury which they said took him out of the rest of his season in the G. But it was more so kind of a, hey, you're gonna be the probable second overall pick in the draft. It wouldn't be
Yeah.
smart
Shut him down. Yeah.
you are the NBA to play you. It makes sense. But because of that, I just have to as the GM in this hypothetical scenario, I have to go with the guy that's not injury prone.
Yeah.
I want the best for
Well,
Zion. I
You
do.
also don't have to give up assets.
Right. And what I would also say is that, it'd be easier to, if you just draft Scoot and then you find trades for Terry, trade for Gordon, or somehow both together, even with getting guys in return that just better fit our franchise. I personally would rather do that. But if we do trade for Zion, I would be thrilled with that too because he's when he plays top 5 player in the league, superstar, great player. Would love to have him. But it's those two options for me. Outside of those options, I'd be fine with other potential trades. I'd be fine with some things, but I'm not fine with anybody other than Scoot with that pick if that's what we end up doing.
All
So,
right. To move along to another. This is fun for me. I get to have 2 bottom dwellers on my podcast. The Bradley Beal rumors.
Both of us ended the year on the couch.
That's true.
Saying.
So Bradley Beal, big week for Brad. Rumors flying all around. Chris, I mean, what do you want from a Beal trade?
I don't know how much they're actually going to be able to get because of the ridiculous contract that he signed.
Mhm.
has not only does it have a no trade clause, for no reason, it also has a 15% trade kicker, which means when he gets traded, he gets extra 15% on top of his salary.
Oof.
So like that's
So he's gonna be making like
working
60 a
heavily.
year later in his
Yes,
contract.
it's gonna work heavily against them in negotiations. His value, I put this on Twitter, but his value was peak like 2 years ago.
Right.
And we were discussing should they trade him or not. And I think in that boat, or at that time, I was in the boat of like, yes, let's trade him. And I don't, it bothers me sometimes talking about it because a lot of Wizards fans are just like, oh, like get him out of here. And he's been a loyal player, obviously, which you don't see that much in the NBA. Like, he does stuff for the city. He's a good guy and all that. But like, he's not worth what his contract is. He's not a player that you build around.
Of course.
So just tearing it down is in the right step, regardless of what you get back for him. So I don't know. Like mock trades I saw were not pretty.
No,
The one
nothing's
with the
been
Heat
really
was
pretty.
like
Yeah.
Hero and Duncan Robinson, which is like fine, I guess. I'd take Hero. The Sixers one was like Tobias Harris and I don't know some scrub.
At least with that
Don't want
trade,
Tobias
Tobias
Harris.
Harris is a expiring contract though, so you can either.
But I'd rather have like a decent young player like Hero than
That's fair.
old
So you'd rather have
scrub.
like a
Heat up the
Hero.
league.
What about a Jordan Poole?
I would take Poole.
Ooh,
Hell,
Barton's,
why not?
Barton's shaking his head. No, Barton's shaking his head.
I mean, he's going into like his third year. It at least gives you a young piece.
Change your scenery.
Jordan Poole is.
Are we forgetting that Jordan Poole was like actually a decent player just because
And he got
had a bad
punched in the
playoff?
face.
Holy
Let's not
shit.
forget he got punched in the face by his teammate. That's kind of big.
It did happen, yeah.
Okay, well, he's younger than I thought he was. For some reason, I thought he played longer at Michigan than he did. I don't know. I think that it would be personally, I'm not really high in the Jordan Poole camp. I think that when I was highest on him in 2022 when
When he won the
Steph
finals.
no. When Steph broke his hand and it was their backcourt was basically Jordan and Clay for a long time and to end the season. And then Steph came back, I believe, in the middle of the first round. It was either game 3 or game 4, something like that. Jordan was incredible. In that role, he was very good. Which, yes, gives you the encouragement that he could be solid with an expanded role. But after this season, to where they signed him to that contract, and he just isn't, like it takes me back to Bill Simmons' whole The Secret. It feels to me like Jordan Poole he never wanted to buy in with Golden State after he got paid. I mean, it's this whole season, when he doesn't start, he just gets angry about it and he takes wild shots. He's not a great defender. He's not efficient. I mean, if you look at it metric wise, he's one of the least efficient guys in the league. So, I mean, in that shot selection, that's just shot making. He just didn't make as many of his shots this year. I feel like this year damaged Jordan Poole's growth.
Beyond
So
repair?
I wouldn't want to take a flyer on him. Not necessarily beyond repair, but is he somebody that I would want in return for an all-star guard? No. Now I know the options.
There's even a
aren't
player for
necessarily-
Beal.
What do you
I
say?
haven't even heard. Like, are the Warriors even a player?
I
I've heard
don't think
Heat,
so.
Bucks, Knicks,
Yeah,
Sixers.
I've only seen
I haven't
Mike.
heard the Warriors once.
But like we're just talking hype like if they would want Jordan Poole. That's my
Yes,
current
why not?
opinion on any team
Basketball
other than
podcast.
Golden State keeping Poole in. But no, I mean what I was gonna say on Beal, I think it very closely mirrors the Russ situation from a few years ago. I think with how bad his contract is, it was just like you were saying, Chris. I mean, it makes as soon as Washington signed him to that contract, it basically told all other teams because at that point there was a lot of trade talk around Beal. There was, will he sign somewhere else? There was like, what was going to happen with Bradley Beal? And then they signed him to that ridiculous deal, and it basically told all fans and other teams, we're not trading Beal. Beal's in it for the long haul. And now look where they're at. And if they're looking to pull the plug, sure, I get it. But now you're too late to go luxury shopping. If you see some good young players, if it comes up, if that Miami trade actually exists with Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson, I would do that in a heartbeat. Personally, I would do that in a heartbeat. That's just because I feel like that's just about maximum value that you're going to get for a guy like Bradley Beal, who's on such a terrible contract. And I think it also benefits both teams to an extent. Bradley Beal's a terrible defender, but with that Heat culture, like I'm sure that would be a team that could really help him in terms of winning. I think that Jimmy's a good mind to pair Beal with. I think that people forget that Beal is a bucket, and a lot of the time Miami just needed a guy that could go get a bucket, and in general they do play good defense. So I think that team would get a lot better with Beal coming in. And if they see Tyler Hero, and I mean, because in my opinion, I think that Hero was he was really close to being an all-star, but if you voted for him to be an all-star, I would have understood it. I mean, he had a great year until he was hurt at different points, but he's a very good player that very well could be an all-star within the next few seasons. I'm taking Hero and Robinson if they're on the table. That's just me.
I think I think that's probably the most realistic fit for both sides. You look at the Heat, you just mentioned, I mean, and even if you look, and everyone's worried about his contract, everyone's worried about how they're going to fill the rest of the team around him with the contract. That really hasn't mattered for the Miami Heat. They will find players to plug in. They will find undrafted guys to fill the role. They'll find some Cody Martin off the bench or Caleb Martin off the bench.
Yeah, those guys grow on trees
for the Heat, but only for the Heat.
Right. No, that's what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
they'll just find anybody like that, and they'll turn them into an effective role player.
And we just saw Tyler Hero out for all of the playoffs. They beat every team in front of them besides the Nuggets, and they made it to the NBA Finals. So you replace that with just Bradley Beal, and all of a sudden you could be competing in the finals and maybe stealing a couple more games from the Nuggets. I want to throw this at you, Chris. RJ Barrett and a first-round pick and some salary filler.
I was just looking at that one. I'd take it.
I would too.
I don't like.
I would much rather have Tyler Hero.
Huge Barrett fan, but he's like a young-ish guy that cannot. You wouldn't necessarily build around him, but he would kind of be like the centerpiece for your rebuild for a little bit.
Yeah,
right.
At least it gives you something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot. I mean, as you said, Brady. I'm a Duke guy. A lot of my family went there. I've been a Duke guy my whole life. It was the first thing I was introduced to sports wise. I'll always be a Duke fan. So I love RJ. I think that at his best, he's a great player. He showed that for Canada. He's shown that in flashes in the league. He showed that at Duke. Not with his shooting, but with other things. And I think that he still can be a superstar in the league. It's such a weird situation because he hasn't showcased much growth in New York. I mean, he's you've seen the production go up, but everybody said, this guy, he gets a better jumper. He finishes more efficiently at the rim. This guy very well could be an all-NBA.
That sounds like we're talking about Ben Simmons.
Right.
Oh, he just can learn how to shoot the basketball.
Right. But RJ has not gotten better at shooting, and he still is not efficient finishing at the rim. And that's been his story. And at least, if we're talking Ben Simmons, at least he's trying. At least he's putting the shots up.
He's out there.
Yeah, but come on. I mean, why won't you see him just like you would hope these percentages go up at some point. But why I see there being reason for optimism with an RJ is that, the Knicks' identity is so weird. On any given night, yes, typically their best player is one of either Brunson or Randall. But it's never definitively Brunson. It's never definitively Randall. Sometimes it's even RJ. It's like, screw it. Whichever on any given night is hot, we'll just go to them. And yeah, they have the same schemes, but it's just like there's no consistent identity with the Knicks, I feel like, other than that grit and grind level play, which I personally love. I love watching Knicks games. But does that mean that it makes the development of RJ Barrett easier? I don't think so. So if you give RJ a team like Washington and you say, hey, man, just ball, play your game, get better. I want you to be the guy for us. You never know. You never know. I'm not willing to fully close the book on him yet.
Randall
We should just
was in
see
New York.
Huh?
Could be like a Randall was in New York. Like Randall was the big Knicks acquisition, and it was like, and yeah, he was decent with the Lakers for a year, and he comes in, and all of a sudden he's elevated to a much higher status. He's not a superstar by any means, but they're a playoff team, and
He was in New Orleans then, right?
was he in New Orleans?
That or the Lakers.
He was in New Orleans before he went to New York. But I mean, same sentiment though. Like I think it went, yeah, because he was drafted in LA, traded to New Orleans.
Okay, well, that's why I remembered him on the Lakers.
Played with
no, just that one season.
Yeah, no, I mean, but yeah, no, same exact sentiment, like 1000%. I think it very well could happen that way, to where a change of scenery on top of different usage, it could really help his growth. You don't know. So it depends. If that Heat trade is there and that Knicks trade is there, I mean, obviously it's, you're the Wizards fan, Chris. I would pick the Heat trade, but if that Heat trade is not there and you're looking for the best trade available and you see a first round pick in RJ Barrett, I'd do that in a heartbeat. But if the Heat trade is there, then I would really have to sit down and think about it.
Yeah, I mean, the pick is enticing, but if it's not, it's the Knicks pick, you expect the Knicks to be a playoff team, so you're not going to get a lottery pick. But I guess you're not getting a lottery pick from anybody.
No, because only contenders want them.
Only contenders are making this trade.
Yeah.
Right. And you got to make sure the pick has no protections, and you got to make sure the pick is like 3 years from now or something along those lines.
Yeah.
That's what I'd do to make it. Actually, if I'm the Knicks, though, if it's going to be a fair trade, I think you would have to make it like a top 10 protected pick, or maybe just top 5. But just because, you if it's a top 5 pick, giving up RJ and a top 5 pick to get Beal, like that would be outrageous. But so I would accept it if they said top 5 or even top 10 protected and RJ Barrett.
I'm gonna throw one more trade at you, Chris. Wizards get Davion Mitchell, Kevin Huerter, Rashad Holmes, and a first-round pick.
I like Mitchell a lot.
I do too.
And your boy Huerter's coming home.
I would gladly take Huerter back.
I think that would be a good one too. I think when you're looking picks wise, who has the potential to get Bradley Beal and completely blow up afterwards? The Kings are right up there, and just any random thing can happen. I mean, it's the Kings. Any random thing can happen, and all of a sudden they're completely.
The Knicks. If we're talking about teams that could absolutely implode,
that's true.
I think the Knicks first round pick over any playoff team.
That's fair.
Because the Knicks.
Yeah, that is fair. I think that I feel like that would be weird with the Kings. I don't really know why they would do that.
What would that look like?
It would look like
like his fit.
Yeah, Fox, Beal, and Sabonis. Not a lot of defense there.
Fox, Beal, Barnes, Murray, and
you trade your like your best defender.
Yeah, I don't know. I personally think the Kings should just.
They should just run
I
it
don't
back.
think they should be in the Bradley Beal market. I agree with you. I think that
I
they
don't
should
either.
just keep the same guys that they got. They have playoff experience against a team that won the championship the prior year. I mean, I think that they're in a great position and everybody just needs more experience. I mean, you saw, the Warriors didn't win, like the Warriors became a very good team before they became a great team. And there were a few important additions along the way, but it was like an Iguodala. Like,
Mhm.
I want Iguodala. It was like him, or it was like Sean Livingston. Like, it was like guys that were, you know, on paper minor, but changed the locker room and changed the team in stretches. They weren't like it wasn't, big roster adjustments. And I think that things like that are more what the Kings should be in the market for than screw it, we were third in the East or in the
Yeah,
West.
let's get Bradley
But
Beal.
we lost
Yeah,
throughout
I
one of the playoffs.
100%
Yeah,
agree
let's
with
get
that.
Bradley Beal to solve our problems. I
That
don't.
goes back to what you said earlier about the lack of patience that we
Right.
see so often. It's like, oh well, we
Mhm.
lost in the playoffs, like we got to change everything. Like, no,
I don't
okay.
think.
And I told you this, Brady, after the Celtics got bounced. It's the toughest thing to do is just run it back.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not the worst idea in the world.
Right.
That's another topic with you guys for another day. But
So, moving on, yet again, Damian Lillard. This has been the hardest player in recent memory who seems like there's a high possibility of him getting traded, but not a lot of actual viable teams for him to go to. I think that's kind of weird saying, especially when we just talked about Bradley Beal with all these options. I haven't seen a lot of rumors with Dame. Actually, I saw today that it seems like the Trailblazers don't want to build around the third pick. Want to try to keep running it back with Dame. Where do you guys see what do you guys see happening with the Portland Trailblazers as a whole, or Damian Lillard finding a new home?
I think
I
that it. Sorry. No, go ahead, Chris.
okay. I don't see anything changing until he like formally requests a trade. And I think with that third pick, I think he's probably confident enough in their ability to go get an impact player that he can play alongside right now. I don't know if he's right to be confident in them because they haven't exactly been best at constructing an effective roster around him. I've seen from the years of Lillard being in Portland, he seems very committed to being there.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I want to push back on the first thing you said, just because he said when they originally asked him if he was interested in them bringing in a top young player. This was before the draft lottery. He said, "Young player, we already have young players. I don't think that this team needs to go out and get another young guy." Basically, so it's like he doesn't want them to draft somebody. He wants them to trade.
He wants to use that pick.
Right.
So I should have clarified. Use that
No,
pick
no,
as an
yeah,
asset.
you're good. And with that, I think that means that they should feel like if they want to build around Dame and they want to win with Dame, then because of him and because he's been loyal to them this long while he's been in his prime and still stayed in Portland when it was a dumpster fire at times, dude, win with him. And when if he's not requesting a trade, then trade the damn pick and get some good return. I mean, make it happen. It's not that hard, and you have a guy who wants to stay with you. Now, if you want to go young, I understand that. But then trade Dame and get some good capital out of it and call it a day. That's what I see happening. What do I see? I think that it's more likely that Portland screws it up and drafts somebody with the number 3 pick and Dame's not happy still. I think that's the most likely thing that happens. Do I think that that's what should happen? Absolutely not. I think that they should go all in on one approach or the other, and I think that they have the tools to go all in on if they do want to contend. Dude, you have Simons, Trade Simons. I don't know. I mean, he's probably got to have some value. He's a great young player. I mean, well, not great, but he's a young guy that's averaging what, 20 some a game? Like, he's real. I like Simons. Some other teams should probably like him too. If you want to go and you want to win now, then commit to it. You have ways to do that. You got Simons, you got the pick. Now you got Jeremy Grant in as a really solid role player. I mean, personally, I think that they should do that. But if they want to go young, then they should do Dame right, get him to a team that's going to be good with him, get him to a team where he likely could win a ring, and then call it a day.
I think they should dump Dame. I think they definitively they should dump Dame. It hasn't worked. You're not going to get no free agents coming to Portland. We've seen that time and time again. They're the number 3 pick in a 3-man draft class so far. When the drop off is at 4, you're already there. You don't know when the next time the lottery ball is going to fall in your favor, and you're going to be up that high. I think they already have Shaedon Sharpe, as you said, Anthony Simons, young core pieces that are already in place. I think Dame is a 32-year-old point guard who doesn't play defense anymore. And yeah, he can get up 50 points any game he wants, but maximizing on that value. Look around the league. There's not that one guy that you're gonna fit with Dame, and all of a sudden you're gonna beat the Nuggets. It's not possible. It's maybe. And I think honestly the biggest puzzle piece to Portland's whole situation is what your Charlotte Hornets do at 2, Mr. Barton. Because if they take Brandon Miller and Scoot Henderson is on the board at 3, all of a sudden you have a lot of teams gunning up to try to get that 3rd pick. And as you've clarified, I think it would be a mistake taking Miller at 2. But
Right.
that's where the mocks are right now, and that's where it's possible. It's definitely possible. So if that comes into fruition, you take Scoot. The things that we just talked about with the Hornets. You take Scoot, and you try to get as much as you can for Dame. But I guess then if the 3rd pick becomes Scoot, it's a lot more valuable. Maybe you can get a Zion out of that. Maybe you can get a Brandon Ingram. I just don't see how. I love Dame. I think Dame and Zion would be a great pairing, but do I think they're going to win a chip together? No.
Yeah.
I think the biggest hurdle to trading Dame is that Damian Lillard sells tickets.
Yes.
Ownership probably does not want to dump their star point guard, who everyone in the city loves.
Yeah.
Take that bath on whatever they lose in ticket sales. Honestly, I think that's what it is.
No, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Yeah. And Brady, I really appreciate that approach, and I like that. I think that, they're kind of just to further off what you're saying, there's a higher chance that when you build from the ground up, like Denver did, like Golden State did, like San Antonio did, there's a higher chance that you can be successful and be successful for a longer period of time than if you do it the Phoenix way and you just put guys in the same room that are all very talented and say, let's figure it out. Like, there's a better chance that you can be good and be good for longer, if you do it the way that you just described. When you have a Simons, when you have a Sharp, when you have whoever they can take with a 3rd pick, it wouldn't be bad for their long-term future to, shake hands with Dame and say, we love you for everything we've done for your city. Let's get you to somewhere where you might be able to win a championship next year. I think that if he goes to Miami, that's where I put my money for next year's champion. Just because, I mean, imagining Dame with his mindset in Miami, I mean, that fills one of their biggest needs because obviously Lowry is on his last legs. I mean, we're watching the walking corpse of Kyle Lowry a lot for at least the regular season. So, I mean, I just think that, they should, if they're going to trade him, and they take that approach, I think they should just do something like that and call it a day. And I think that would be a really smart thing for him. I think they would.
Scores points, which is their weakness.
Yes.
That's true.
Yes. I guess last little rumors going around. We didn't really touch on the Chris Paul situation too much on this podcast. They said they're gonna waive him. It seemed like that was kind of just a ploy to get some trade market out there. I always hate that. I mean, if you say you're gonna cut him, it's the same thing that happens in football all the time. It's like, oh, we're gonna cut him if we don't trade him, and it's like, all right, so great. Now his value is a 7th round pick. So I think it looks like they want to move on from Chris Paul. Looks like they want to find a trade partner.
Why?
Why?
Is it because he's a joke artist and because he's been great for that team?
I think it's just
Maybe Durant hates him.
maybe, but I think it's just you were there, and you were in the finals with them, and it ever since it hasn't worked out ever since. So I think that could be it. You have a good point. He was the veteran. He was like when they traded Chris Paul to the Suns, it was like, oh, that was their big veteran move. This is the leader that's gonna take them far, and it worked out. So I guess it would be interesting to see where he does end up if he does stay with the team. I'm here. It seems like the betting favorites is him to join up with Victor Wembanyama in the Spurs, help out that young core. I wouldn't hate it, but I also wouldn't like it because Wembanyama is not going to be able to compete for another 2-3 years, and Chris Paul's 38.
They already have a point guard who plays very similarly to Chris Paul right now in Trey Jones, and he keeps getting better. So I don't know. Personally, I don't know. I mean, like I respect the thought process of he's a good mind to have, but I saw a trade that goes back to my Hornets with Chris Paul.
Really?
Yeah. It was like no rumor or anything, but when I got off work earlier and was just hanging out, there was this guy on Bleacher Report who was cooking up Hornets mock trades, and there was one that sent Terry Rozier to Phoenix for Chris Paul, and I'm all for it. I'm like, Chris Paul wouldn't start, that's for sure, but he'd be a great mind and a great locker room presence for a team that needs that. But honestly, if we're talking Chris Paul, like bar for bar, I'm with Chris on this one. And I think when you look at it, there's just, in my opinion, it goes back to what the same theme that we brought up a few times throughout this episode in terms of that impatience, in terms of that, not, that unwillingness to allow guys to just not be at their best and then giving them another chance. Because I mean, what happened with Chris, it's the same. I mean, you go back to the hypotheticals in Houston. If he didn't get hurt in Houston, would they have been able to beat Golden State? Many say probably. Would, what could have happened, in the whole playoffs against where they ended up losing in the finals. Chris wasn't at his best. He was having shoulder problems. This playoffs, Chris got hurt. And yes, he does have an injury problem. And if that's what it's about, I understand. But if you're going for roster construction, I don't get it off of that alone, personally. I think that just because of how close they were and how good they were when everybody was healthy, I don't see why you do it, personally. I mean, they were top 3 in both offensive and defensive rating the entire time that they had both all of Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker in the game at some point. So I don't know. I don't like moving on from Chris Paul if I'm the Phoenix Suns.
And what do you do at point guard? You do move on from him.
If you do move on from him,
that's where I'm at. It's like,
yeah,
he's getting to the point where he's almost cooked.
Do you go all in for the Harden thing? Like, what do you do?
No.
That's what I'm saying. Like that's too risky
Kyrie?
too. Kyrie, maybe.
Kyrie, yeah. Just try it again with Durant and Kyrie.
Yeah, run it back.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I don't know, man. It's really like I don't think Cameron Payne is ready to be that guy who can just like step up and be their next starting point guard, assuming they get rid of Chris Paul. So it's like, what do you do? And I mean, personally, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea having a guy like a Schroeder, like somebody like that. Not saying Schroeder specifically, but somebody that's like just going to be kind of that role playing point guard, just to say, hey, like, yeah, we're just our job is just to not do too much, but to be enough and to get Booker and KD the ball. Boom.
That's basically
Easy.
what he's going to be at this point in his
Exactly.
career.
Right. And that's why I don't see why you move Chris Paul. Because Chris Paul is like the exact prototype guy for this roster.
They
So
need, if they keep Paul, they still need to get another point guard. That doesn't change because as you just discussed, you went through his whole injury history.
yeah.
By the time the playoffs come around, he's going to be beaten. He's going to be he's going to be, worn
40
out.
games in the regular season.
I mean,
He
yeah,
did
let's
this
Every
year.
not
other night.
he's 39 years old.
So
Yeah, they are
I
going to
don't
need to
know.
get another backup point guard that's at least serviceable, for sure.
This just, I mean, I don't know. Everything we just kind of talked about seems like reasons for why to trade him. But
I agree, but you already waived him. It's like, what are you doing? And on top of that, it's like now, I mean, it goes back to what we said earlier about Beal. Why would they sign him to another massive contract? Why? I just don't understand why. Like if you're ever in the position of managing an NBA franchise, this goes for you, Brady, because I know you're considering it or considering trying. Don't
considering it,
sign a
yeah,
guy
I
to
got
a contract
plenty of offers. It's just,
whereby
which one I want to do.
don't sign a guy
Mullen.
to a contract where by the time he finishes the contract, he's going to be 40 years old. That doesn't make sense. Nobody does that. And like, I mean, that was one of the worst decisions that they could have made. And I mean, sometimes my dad's kind of an old head, he'll just sit around on his iPad and he'll say have some Debbie Downer takes about ball. And I get it. But that's one of his takes that I couldn't agree more with. If you have a guy, I mean, there are very, 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 very few exceptions to guys who are that old and still extremely productive. And
Wrong.
Chris Paul is not an exception
Like
to
the
that.
only one.
He's by definition the example of that. So I don't know. I don't know why they did it. And now they're once again, or no, yeah, they're another team reaping the benefits, or you know what I mean, reaping the consequences of a terrible contract.
So, speaking of big contracts and unfortunate things happening, we are going to move on to the news that also broke this morning. A little more solidified news, not just rumors and hypotheticals. Ja Morant is suspended for 25 games of the NBA season, starting at the beginning of next season. Is it fair? Is it too high? Is it too low? What do you guys think?
Definitely fair.
The way that they were talking about it, it felt like he was going to be like shipped overseas.
I thought it was pretty 50. I thought it could have been a whole season.
Yeah, 25 seems fair to me.
I think it's
mean,
too
that's, like,
high.
that's a big chunk. You do?
I think it's too
Okay.
high. What? All
Okay,
right.
Brady. If you think it's too high, tell me this, right? He does it once. He gets 8 games. He meets with Adam Silver. He does the whole, I'm going to therapy. Look at me.
Rehab.
I'm going to come out better. And then he does it again. It's like, what do you do for a guy that makes the same mistake twice? Making the mistake once is wrong, and it's a mistake. Making the same mistake twice is absurdity. And that's why I'm like, anybody I saw the whole Players Association statement saying they think it's unfair. I'm like, dude, if you give him 25 for doing it once, yeah, I would agree. I think it's unfair. Like, yes, it's legal to own a weapon, but that doesn't mean, it goes against its league policy and it's brandishing a weapon. It's stupid. He didn't need to be doing that. He's an idiot. Okay, I'd say he's young and immature. Like I'm talking about an athlete who, at the end of the day, he's like 4 years older than me. I mean, it's really not a big difference. He's just a human being, and he made a mistake. But the thing about it is that, again, he made the same mistake twice, and that's why I wouldn't have been mad if it was more than 25. I was kind of surprised to see it was just 25. And am I okay with it? 1000% I'm fine with it being just 25 because I think he's great for the league and like in general, objectively. But I mean, it's just an incredible lack of judgment for him to do the same thing twice. And I just can't believe how I mean, how can you look the commissioner of the NBA in the eyes and say, "I'm sorry, Adam," or "I'm sorry, Mr. Silver. I won't do it again. I appreciate this light sentence." And then you do it again.
Yeah.
don't know.
Okay. I will
I mean,
say.
who takes Adam Silver seriously?
I do think the second offense it does make it make the 25 a little warranted. But when you're looking at it, it's 30% of the season. He's your high market guy. He's supposed to be the next generation, and he is supposed. I mean, and in doing so, flashing a gun on Instagram Live is not what you want in the look of the next generation for the NBA. But I like Miles Bridges, and I guess he was out all season, but then they changed it and said it was like a 30-game suspension that he already passed, and
No, it was 30 and 10 of it was already served. So he's gonna be out, I think, or it was 25. He's gonna be out 15 games, even if he plays again next season.
so he does something way worse and gets, and I guess he was basically kicked out of the league this season, but that wasn't because that wasn't an NBA ruling, and
Yeah.
now
That was
I just think for that to roll in as 15 next year, and then looking at this being 25, doesn't make a lot of sense in my head.
I
And
agree. That's a great
That's
perspective.
fair.
I didn't even consider that.
the other thing is, I just think they're losing. Memphis is a small market, and losing him for 30% of the season or regular season is going to take a hit on the team standing, on the team, the team's popularity. So I think, and this isn't saying like, oh, we shouldn't have been suspended at all. I'm thinking like 18 games, maybe 20-ish. I just think they probably tacked on a couple extra because of what you said with the second offense, and it makes sense. I mean, when it does make sense. I just think it was a little pricey, but you're making a statement if you're Adam Silver. You're putting hopefully everything to rest, and
Yeah.
hopefully another player doesn't end up making the same mistakes because they see what it resulted in for John Morant.
I think that it was, I'm just kind of sitting here thinking about I like the comparison, but I think now that we're making the comparison, we have to acknowledge that it's almost unfair to make. Just because you're not, you can really only compare the first time Ja did that to the Miles suspension. Because I think that the only thing you're really able to fairly compare is Ja's first offense and Ja's second offense. And they happened so closely together, and Ja had the commissioner under the impression that it wasn't going to happen again, and it did. And that's why it ended up being what it ended up being. Now, to take away from the suspension perspective and to shift gears to the team standings perspective, a lot of evidence points to saying that the Grizzlies might very well be just fine without Ja this season. Well, not the entire season, but at least when he's serving his suspension, and then who knows,
Yeah,
if he
they've been good without him.
They've been more than okay without him. In fact, I mean, I'll look it up on StatMuse right now, but I'm pretty sure they have like a 60-some% winning percentage without him. I mean, they're very
Years
good
ago, they went
without
like
John Morant. In many
18
ways,
and 2
better
or something ridiculous.
or without. Sorry, what did you say, Chris?
2 years ago, didn't they go like 18 and 2 or something ridiculous without him?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
20 and
they did.
5.
Yeah.
The
That is
Grizzlies
wild.
are 33-17 without Ja Morant since last season, including the playoffs. 21-7 in 2022, 12-10 in 2023. So I mean, it goes to say, I mean, and if I don't know where I'd find these statistics, but I know that typically they play more efficient basketball, defend better, and move the ball better, all when Ja is not on the floor. So I don't know. I mean, who knows how it's going to actually affect the Grizzlies standing? And I think that Ja, as he said, he's going to take the time, he's going to train, he's going to do all that stuff. Like, go for it. But at the end of the day, like, I think when he comes back, he has to say, do what's best for the team to win rather than just having these incredible individual performances like we're so accustomed to see from him. I think that, in many cases, flying up in the air towards the rim and getting charges called against you is just not going to be what's best for the team. And there's a lot of things like that where he just has to become a smarter, more disciplined basketball player, not just a smarter, more disciplined person. So I think that this growth
One thing at a time.
in all areas.
Yeah, he's got to figure out one thing at a time, definitely.
Well, I mean, they're like one may help each other is all I'm saying. You never know. And I think that it could end up benefiting Memphis that their stars having this kind of midlife crisis. I think it might put some things in a perspective for him and help them, bounce back and adjust the way that they need to where they can actually be the contender that people have been trying to say that they should be.
I hope so. How many guns do you think he's going to buy while he's suspended?
Hopefully none. A couple water guns.
Um,
So
It's like when Apple changed the gun emoji to the water gun.
yes, stopped gun violence.
Yeah.
So to end this podcast on a lighter note than the Ja Morant suspension, Karl Anthony Towns decided to add some comedy into the world this past couple days. Hopped on the Pat Bev pod, which is always a good sign to start a headline. Oh, he hops on the Pat Bev pod. You already know
Just hosted
genius.
by Barstool.
Yeah, genius takes are coming when they're on the Pat Bev pod. So he came out and he said that the Timberwolves, Pat Bev's and the Timberwolves run in the play-in, I guess now 2 years ago, was more impressive than the Nuggets.
Oh, this year.
But they didn't make. Oh, I mean, I thought they were talking about Pat Bev standing up on the table and then winning the play.
Yeah.
Were they? Well, I
Yeah.
thought it was this year because it was Go Bears. I thought that's what he meant.
I'm pretty sure.
Either way, it doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. But I think it was the one with Pat Bev. But I don't doesn't matter.
Okay.
And either way, they said it's better. It's a better run than what the Nuggets just did in the NBA Finals, and that they deserve more credit. Basically,
Don't.
why even say this?
It was so serious.
Like, do you
too.
want? Yeah,
He was,
do you
like,
want to be
fired up
clowned?
that people are like not giving him respect?
He also
The
said that
softest guy in the league.
he also said that when he leaves basketball, he will forever have changed the center position. And he said that he could drop 40 points every night if the coach let him.
But I think like those things are crazy. But I think what might even be worse than all of that, I saw either a notification or an Instagram post of the quote of what, because when you told me before we recorded or started recording about this, what I thought of from this episode was when Pat Bev said that Karl Towns was the best offensive player in the or was the best center in the league, as well as one of the best offensive players in the league. And I'm like, listen, I get it. You want to be facetious right after Jokic leads the Nuggets to a title. I understand. But at the end of the day, saying that is just so atrocious. And when the vast majority of the time, Towns wasn't even playing center this year. And yes, he is better as a center. Sure, all of us can agree that this Gobert experiment, it was stupid from the start. But
Destined to fail.
why even, I mean, I don't know, man. Hearing Pat Bev, and everybody's entitled to their opinion, but hearing him speak about some things just makes me less intrigued to listen to the things he might have to say in the future.
Is this for me? Is this like a ploy to try to be a villain, try to be one of the most hated players in the league? Because he's asking for it. He's asking for one of the least respected players in the league. Because when you say stupid shit like this, you become a meme, and in this day and age, the memes are everything, especially for the NBA. So I don't know, like, what is the angle here? Is the angle to try to gain some more respect, try to get some hate behind him because he was going at Jokic? It's not like he's gonna be able to back it up. So I don't understand any of this. Like, they
This is
literally
the same
lost.
guy who
Oh, go ahead.
said after the Warriors won one of their championships when he was like, Curry had the last 4 years, the next 4 are mine.
Oh yeah, Pat Bev.
Dude.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And when Curry said, aren't you like 32? Like, that was hilarious to me. It was like, dude, like, okay, so like those years where you're just going further into your 30s are gonna be yours. Sick.
I also I love. I'm glad that you brought that up. He sees how Pat Bev is and how like respected he is as a player.
Mm.
And what was he just like? All right, I want to be just like Pat Bev.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, like me and Pat are that close. Like, let's get Pat Bev. Let's get on his level.
That's just wild to me. I mean, and it brings like, I don't know why. I mean, this is just one of my other favorite NBA memes. I know this has like nothing to do with Pat Bev, but I think my other favorite NBA meme right now, and this is kind of old, but it's, the same thing we texted about probably about a month ago in our chat, Brady, of when Bradley Beal dropped 30 a game for the Wizards and they were in dead last, and he was like basically crying to get named an all-star because of how incredible he was statistically. When it's like, oh my gosh, y'all were not a good team. Like why, why are you this upset about being an all-star when your team just sucks? Like, it makes sense that you're like, if you got left off the ballot just because you were dropping 30 some a game, like, yeah, somebody's got to get buckets. Like, come on now.
Yeah, I think that's like perfect Karl Anthony Towns territory too, where it's like, well, someone's got to get the buckets on the team. And I think Karl Anthony
And
Towns.
he could score 40 every night if the coach let him. Like, obviously, he would just take every shot.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, and that being said,
Good player could do that.
I do think Karl Anthony Towns is a good player. He's definitely not going to change the game of basketball when he retires, and he definitely has no good reason to ever say that the Nuggets run wasn't good or wasn't comparable to their Minnesota run, which was literally a play-in victory that Pat Bev stood on top of the table and thought that they won the championship.
It's so crazy.
We're already giving him too much attention then.
Yeah, and this is what it was. This is exactly what he wants. You're right, Chris. He wants people to come on these shows and talk about how ridiculous these takes are, and then talk about Karl Anthony Towns. So,
and don't get me wrong, it's awesome that he's a great shooter. It's awesome that, yes, like him being a center and being able to space the floor like that. Yes, that made the game of basketball, or like it made it. It's something that you don't see still out of a ton of centers.
Mhm.
But he wasn't like the first center to start shooting a ridiculous amount of threes. Like, he wasn't like the first center to start shooting threes in general. He's making it seem like he revolutionized centers shooting threes, and once he retires, that's going to be his legacy. But at the end of the day, just about nobody's going to think of that. Yeah, people remember him, and
nobody's
going to
think about Karl Anthony Towns.
Well, yeah, people are going to remember the fact that, like, oh yeah, it's cool that, like, he was the first big man to ever win a 3-point contest. Like, that's pretty cool. He was, I mean, he was a really good 3-point shooter for a big man, but he didn't just be that guy. It wasn't like, oh, Karl Towns got drafted. Oh wow, centers are starting to shoot threes now. Like that's
Yeah.
not going to be his legacy in by any means. Sure, like some, but like the like it makes me think of it like, you know, he views it as he was the guy who walked so centers could shoot threes and they're running per se.
Yeah.
But in reality, other centers walked, aka dabbled in shooting threes, and then he just took that torch and ran with it, which is great. It's cool. Don't get me wrong. Good for him. But I don't think that that's something that he should like significantly pride himself on, because I think that he should pride himself on the fact that yeah, he's a good player, he's a good 3-point shooter, but saying that he's good, that he changed the league and once he retires he will have changed the league, it's a ridiculous take. It's a ridiculous thing to say. I mean, I think it's kind of embarrassing from on his part. I mean, you're right. We're giving him what he wants. We got to stop. But it's
Like Carl
I
Anthony
mean,
clowns.
yeah, and like I know I don't know him, but I've heard him talk enough to know that he's a very good person. He doesn't need to be doing the stuff that he's doing with saying things like that. He doesn't. I mean, you see it, and
There's just
it's
no
the same.
warrant for it. There's no warrant for
Yeah,
it.
it's just doesn't need stuff that doesn't need to be said. You know, let other people do the talking for you. You know, it's how a lot of stars operate. And it's just like, you know, you can't just demand your flowers. I mean, sure, Embiid kind of did it and got him eventually, like good for him, but the best stars are you're not going to say like I deserve a championship and just win a championship. No, you're going to work incredibly hard and go win a championship. You know? So, I don't know. That's my opinion. I don't know. I think that sometimes guys just have high pride and want to separate themselves from the league and make like give themselves respect, but at the end of the day it's just not that impressive. It's like you get respect by being a great player, and you know, you'll know that by when you get the respect that you feel like you deserve. And if you aren't getting it, then go earn it. You know, like
100%
stop
agree.
talking, earn it.
All right. I think that does it. We covered everything we wanted to cover today. Thank you, Aaron, for coming on.
No, thank you.
I know you you had a couple podcasts yourself at a couple points. If you want to shout them out, go right ahead. I don't know if you're still grinding
Yeah.
out or not.
Yeah. Thank you for giving me that opportunity. Well, thank you guys for having me on today. This was a ton of fun. I really enjoyed this. For you guys listening, I don't really have a consistent posting schedule or anything, but if you guys would like or not, I really don't care. But if you would feel so nice and you enjoyed listening to me, I would appreciate it if you do go follow Ordinary Guys podcast on Instagram. I'm not sure exactly when it's happening / coming out yet, but on in a few weeks, my cousin potentially and one of my best friends and we're gonna do in just a long form pod on men's mental health, and because
Oh,
on
that's
top
great.
of Pride Month is Men's Mental Health Month, or yeah, Men's Mental Health Month, and apparently there's also a Men's Mental Health Awareness Month in November. But you know, we weren't
November.
for the fact that it was then. We always kind of wanted to do an episode on just men's mental health and mental health in general. So if you like stuff like that, just life topics, philosophy stuff, go over there, follow it. We're gonna be talking about that soon, so I'd appreciate the support there. But again, thank you guys for having me on. This was sick. Would love to come back anytime. So great talking ball with y'all, Chris and Brady. And once again, nice meeting you, Chris.
Yeah, this was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming on.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, go check out that. I think that's a great point out that it's also men's mental health awareness month, and you know, that needs to be celebrated too. So that's great. Chris, your dog's barking. Seems like it's time to go.
No.
You got anything to say before we head out?
Put me on the spot. College Corner, we lost our baseball coach to Alabama.
Rough.
That sucks, but yeah.
It does suck.
All right.
Ready for the draft.
Ready for the draft. It'll be exciting. We're gonna do a full mock draft on Tuesday of the lottery. I mean, it's a crapshoot after that. Let's not waste our time there. So check that out Tuesday. Draft coming Thursday, and a lot to talk about come Friday. So thank you all for listening. Thanks again, Aaron, for hopping on, and we'll see
Yes, sir.